Hello everyone, so today I'm going to show you how I knit this lace sweater on my Sentro Knitting Machine. I used about 400 grams of iron weight yarn. Let's start with the back pieces. We'll be knitting this sweater bottom up, so we'll measure the bottom of the sweater that we already own. Using a gauge of 1.4 needles per centimetre, we convert that, and I got 72.8 needles. We only have 43 needles to work with, so we already know that we're going to have to make 2 panels for the front. So I divide 72.8 in half and get 36.4 needles. I will round this to 36 needles. Now we want to work out the rows. Let's start easy with the total number of rows. So measure from the top to the bottom of the sweater. I got 76 centimeters or around 30 inches. And convert that to rows with a gauge of 1.8. If you do want to know how I worked out my gauge, I will link a video in the cards. And that gets us 136.8 rows. I'll round that to 137 rows. And I know that I want to add 10 rows of 1x1 ribbing at the bottom. So that gives us a final row count of 127 rows. Now we need to work out the shaping bits. So from the bottom up, we will hit the armpit first. So let's measure how many rows that will be. I got 50 centimeters or around 20 inches. So again, we will convert that with a 1.8 gauge, which gives us 89 minus 10 for the ribbing. So we get 79 rows. So we know at row 79, we need to start doing some decreases to narrow the sweater. So to know how many decreases we want to do, we want to measure the narrowest part of the sweater. I got 43.5 centimeters or about 17 inches. Again, we will convert that with a gauge of 1.4 needles per centimeter, and we get 60.9 rows. If you remember though, we're making 2 panels, so we need to halve that, which we get 30.45 rows. So we're starting with 36 and we need to get down to 30. So from row 79, we will need to do 6 decreases. So we have a pattern for the back left side. The right pattern is pretty much the same, only we will be doing the arm shaping on a different side. So we move those instructions to the following row. So let's get started. Using waste yarn, cast on 36 stitches. You want to weave the yarn in front and behind each hook. Then you want to add your working yarn. And then we're going to knit 79 rows. At each end, remember to give the yarn a little tug just to tighten up the stitches. Every few rows, stretch out the fabric and check for any skipped stitches. Now we will work the armhole shaping. Don't knit the last stitch, instead use a loom pick to move it to the previous needle. We will do 6 decreases on the same side. So don't knit this one that I've circled. Use the loom pick to move it to the previous needle. Then knit the stitch. Okay, so that's all 6 decreases done. So now we're just going to knit back and forth until you hit row 127. So it's time to cast off. So you want to start by cutting your working yarn and then using waste yarn on a darning needle. You want to turn the wheel and then pick up each stitch. I like to do 5 or 6 at a time, but do whatever makes you comfortable. And now it's free. And now for the other side. So cast on 36 stitches again. Then add your working yarn and knit 79 rows. So now it's time for the arm shaping, but if you remember from when we were creating the pattern, we need to do it on the other side. So we're just going to knit one more row, so then we'll hit row 80, and then we're going to do the decreases on this side. So don't knit that final stitch. Grab your loom pick and lift it and move it to the previous needle. And then knit that stitch. And we're going to do that 6 times. And then after the 6 decrease rows, we're just going to knit back and forth again until we hit 127 rows. And again, time to cast off. So just cut your working yarn, grab your darning needle with some waste yarn and pick up each stitch. For the front pieces, pretty much start where we left off with the back pieces, but we just need to calculate where we want the V-neck to go. And you can skip this step if you want a crew or a boat neck sweater. But if you do want the V-neck, you want to measure from the bottom to the start of the neckline. I've got 58 centimeters or 23 inches. And then convert that with a gauge of 1.8 rows, and we get 104 rows. Again, we're going to remove the 10 rows for the ribbing, so that's 94 rows. So at row 94, we need to start doing the shaping for the V-neck, and I'm just going to continue that right to the top of the sweater. So we'll just do the decreases until we hit 127 rows. So now we have our pattern for the front left-hand side. So as you can see, we're going to cast on 36 needles. Overall, we're going to do 127 rows. At row 79, we're going to start decreasing, and we're going to do 6 decreases. And then at row 94, we're going to start doing the neck shaping until we hit the end. The right panel is pretty much the same, only we will be doing the arm shaping and neck shaping on the different side. So we want to move those instructions to the following row. So where we're doing an odd row on the left side, we want to be doing an even row on the right side, and vice versa. So as you can see here at row 80, that's when we're going to start doing the armhole shaping, and we're going to start the neck shaping at row 95. So let's get started. Using waste yarn, cast on 36 stitches. Add your working yarn and then knit 3 rows. we will be following a lace pattern. This pattern can be found on my blog. The link is in the description box below. I've linked a video above in the cards of where you can find how to make the lace padding, but basically for every number on the pattern we will move a stitch to the following needle. I apologise for the blurry footage, it will clear up soon. Then you want to knit back to the start and then start the next row. That's the first lace row completed. Follow your lace pattern until row 79. Adding the lace does double the time it takes to create the front pieces, but I think it's worth it. Look at that lace pattern coming together. It's time for the arm shaping now. So we're just going to move that last stitch to the one before to create a decrease. And then we're going to do 6 of those in total. Now it's time to add the V-neck shaping. So you don't want to knit the final stitch, and instead we will cast it off onto waste yarn. Pop the needle in the centre, we'll be using it again for the rest of the stitches. I'm going to show you that again in slow motion. So don't knit this stitch that I've circled right here. And then just pick it up and pop it onto the waste yarn. Now we have 2 stitches cast off. So we're going to continue with the lace pattern and casting off one side until we reach 127 rows. Okay, so now it's time to cast off. And then the next thing to do is just to repeat those steps on the other side. I've not included footage of that because this video is getting a bit long. Just like the body pieces, we'll be knitting the sleeves bottom up. So we start by measuring the widest part of the sleeve. This is usually at the bicep area. I got 17 centimeters or 6.7 inches. Then we want to double that so we can get the circumference of the sleeve. So that's 34 centimeters or 13.4 inches. And then we convert that to needles using a gauge of 1.4 needles per centimeter, which gives us 47.6 needles. We only have 43 needles to work with, but I know that the fabric will have some stretch, so I decided to just make one panel for the sake of making two panels for just 4 needles. You guys already know how that turned out, so hopefully that worked out okay. So now we will work out the rows. So we want to measure from the cuff to the shoulder. I'll be adding the cuff later. And then we convert that measurement to rows using a gauge of 1.8 rows per centimeter. That gets 104 rows. And then for the arm shaping, we want to measure from the cup to the armpit. So that's 40.5 centimeters or 16 inches. And then again, convert that to rows, so that's 73 rows. So now we have the pattern for our sleeves. We'll be casting on 43 needles and knit a total of 104 rows. From row 73, we'll be decreasing on both sides. Both sleeves will be worked in the same way and should look something like this when we are done. Let's go make the sleeves. Using waste yarn, cast on 43 needles and knit 73 rows. Now we've hit row 73, we need to cast off each side. I did the same as we did for the neckline, as I thought it would be easier to attach live stitches when connecting the arms to the body pieces. But I just couldn't get it to look right, so in the end I finished off the edges and seamed them together. So you could just do decreases here instead of casting off. After 104 rows, cast off onto waste yarn. Then repeat the pattern for the second sleeve. I added a lace pattern to my second sleeve to see what it looked like. I may redo the first sleeve and add the lace pattern at a later date. Now it's time to stitch it all together, and I seem to have misplaced some of the footage of me doing this, so please enjoy this reenactment in PowerPoint. Lay out your pieces like so. Stitch the front and back pieces together. I used a mattress stitch. attach the shoulders. Then the sleeves. Fold everything in half and stitch up the sides and down the sleeves. Then it's just time for the ribbing and hiding in the ends. For the cuffs, I did 1 row of all knits with a 4mm hook, then I did knit 2, purl 2 together all the way around, and then continued with a knit 2, purl 1 rib for 12 rows and cast it off with a single crochet and an invisible join. For the neckline, I picked up all the stitches with a 4mm hook, adding 2 stitches at the shoulder join, and then I did 5 rows of knit 2, purl 1 ribbing. I did a decrease at the V on alternating sides. I've never done a V neckline before, and I think it turned out okay for my first try. I did notice that I somehow managed to twist the stitches when I was initially picking them up, so I need to be a bit more careful with that. For the hem, I used a 6mm hook and picked up every stitch. I did 10 rows of knit 2, purl 1 ribbing, again casting off with a single crochet and an invisible join. Now she's all finished. I'm very happy with the fit. This is my first time making a flat panel sweater. I do think I prefer a knit in the round raglan sweater, but considering this took days instead of weeks and months it takes for me to knit a sweater usually, I'm very pleased, and I think with practice my joining techniques will hopefully get better. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more tutorials and techniques. I'll see you in the next one.